But in this instance, it seemed fueled by some sort of political leanings, and that's concerning, because then it becomes manipulative. I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Kamala fan either. Kamala, however you say her damn name. I'm not. All right, everyone, we're back again with the PEM podcast. That's pragmatic ego management or mitigation. And yeah, that's kind of like to remind people that's really what this whole idea is about. It's about identifying and dissecting out the ego within the interactions amongst people and social structures and organizations even, and looking at maybe what could be different, where you can extract the ego from something and remove it. How would an outcome be different? And I would say 100% of the time, a more positive outcome if egos aren't allowed into the interaction in the first place. Part of this is something that's done by being very meticulous. And you know, sometimes I'm not even meticulous enough. It's easy for us to rush ahead. One of the things that happens quite often is people are adopting beliefs and without questioning them, right? I see that all over the place in politics, in religion, even in scientific study. You know, there's scientific, you know, experimental bias, all kinds of things in which people have decided they believe something without really taking a deep dive into it and questioning the belief and questioning what the results of believing in whatever it is may be. And that slowing down of the process can have a powerful effect on removing ego from at least a personal mental framework that somebody's operating from. But then also, you know, then there's the triggers, there's the past trauma, there's a lot of things that affect people that then have an in real time effect that is hard to avoid in some cases. And that takes training, that takes work, that takes a lot of personal growth to achieve that. And I think as a global society at this point, we are at the infant stages of even addressing that. And it's an extremely difficult problem. It's very, very challenging to overcome the egoic mindset. And ego is something that some people have trouble with that word. They think it's something that's necessary for us to survive, for us to operate within our reality-based world. But I think that the issue is definition. So we could replace it with other terms like hubris or self-importance. Something along those lines. You know, it's misleading too, because it doesn't always mean that someone is arrogant. There are people who are the opposite of arrogant that are also operating from deep egoic mindsets. Someone who's an extremely shy and timid person actually has, and often has a large ego. And that is counter to what many of us think of. And I would have to go into explanations and further examples in order to really explain that. It's really the timid, shy person is really just the inverse or flip side of the coin from the arrogant, kind of loudmouth person. So anyway, yeah, that's what this channel is really about, is getting to the marrow, the meat of that question there, and examining things from a slower, more meticulous perspective. And one of the important things in all of this oftentimes is definitions. And I've been having discussions with people, and oftentimes we're assuming that words mean a certain thing for everyone involved in the discussion, and that is not always true. So that even adds a whole nother layer. So anyway, I could talk about that forever. We're going to get into this episode, look at these videos, but food for thought there on how you approach reality in general, your own ideas, your own beliefs, your own mental framework in which you approach the world and other people. So let's see what we got.
Kamala or Trump?
Kamala Harris.
What is your favorite Kamala Harris policy?
That's the fact that, she represents America well. Just the basics, all of that.
That's your favorite policy?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about her trying to ban the 13th Amendment to bring people more together and stuff?
I feel like that's good though. Like bring the USA more together, and just I feel like she's doing a great job.
She's gonna try and pass a treaty called the Tree Treaty, where she's cutting down more trees to help air pollution and like the icebergs from collapsing and melting and overflowing the earth. How would that help the polar bears and especially us on this side of town?
It would help the polar bears because they need to maintain their environment and their,
You know how she said she loves females and stuff?
Yeah.
She's trying to increase the age of getting your license as a male to 21 to make it safer for females on the road. How would you feel being safer?
I feel like I'll be more safe because there's not a lot of crazy drunk people. Because, people 18 or 16, they're getting their license. They're trying to act cool and show up for their friends, but they're not actually experienced mentally.
Exactly.
So I feel like that actually is good from everybody's sake of, like, life and all that.
Especially if they're, like, in the Benz truck trying to show off and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That would help?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's hard to watch stuff like that because this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Here's a bunch of statements that are made. That's why it's important to be willing to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't heard of this. Where has that been announced? At what point were those statements made? What's the source of these statements? How are we verifying that these statements are true and correct statements? None of the people in this video, which there wasn't that many of them, what was it, just the two, I guess, right? Or yeah, I think it was just two of them, right? But still, they were just willing to go along with whatever was said and then justify the statement in saying that they thought it was a good thing because it was framed around, I guess, their political leanings, which what are their political leanings based on at all if they don't even know that the statements that were being fed were completely false, like not even something that was close to a true statement, right? Something that was so outlandish. This guy is just pointing out how, the word is, these people are seen as stupid. I don't know that it's stupidity. I don't know what you call that. There's a denseness there, a deep denseness. Is it a low IQ? Is that really what it is? What I see are characters that start to border on the NPC level of just filler, just people. They are so. We talked about NPCs before. Remember, I forget which episode that was, where there was someone who was almost. It seemed like that's exactly what they were, just a pure NPC, like filler for the system, for the Matrix. And these are people who they aren't questioning their beliefs at all. So I think my opener today, I never know what the videos are necessarily going to be. And so I just open with what's on my mind. And it seems like my opener today was fairly on point in that what I'm encouraging people to do is address their beliefs and question their beliefs. Why do I believe what I believe? Where am I getting this from? What is causing me to choose what I believe about whatever the information that's in front of me, down to the very root level of like, why am I here as a human being? But, I think most people don't. They're not spending time questioning their beliefs at all, regardless of what the venue is, political, religious, interpersonal relationship, regardless, whatever it is. They just accept statements as truths, accept things as this is the way it is, and then formulate and construct some ideas around supporting that belief, which these people were believing these statements in light speed. Like the statement would come in, it almost feels like he could have said anything to them, like, hey, you could fly if Kamala Harris has, started an initiative to make it possible for humans to fly if they jumped off buildings, so it would save suicide victims. Would they have believed something? How far could he have gone? I think he could have went to pretty extreme levels, especially if he initiated it and got them to agree, and then put in something even more outlandish. I think he could have led them on a real wild ride. For these particular people to actually question, go, wait, that doesn't sound right. What is it going to take? And my point is that I think a vast population, I don't know if I want to say majority, I don't know what, I think there is a majority out there that's accepting beliefs very easily, especially if we get into things around religion, especially if we get into things around sexuality, especially as we get into things around politics. People just suck up whatever is there for whatever reason, because somehow they have a personal preference. I don't know what it's based on, what their personal preference is. I think in this instance, we have, an African-American woman running for president, and so we had 2 African-American women. Is that part of it because they just relate and they just want an African-American woman to be president? So they, because they feel good about that, they're willing to support any ideas, and anything that kind of is coming from her campaign. In this case, not at all. It's not even coming from her campaign, but even perceived as coming from her campaign, then they're going to support that. And that doesn't sound any different from the Trump supporters either. Where was it recently? I just watched some stuff on the Trump side of things where they were, very similar format as this guy, but not where they were posing false ideas or completely false statements to MAGA people, but asking legitimate questions. Like, one of the questions they asked a Trump supporter was, what would Trump have to do in order for you to lose his support? That was one. It was asked of one MAGA gentleman somewhere, I think in the South, probably. I don't know. Anyway, and he said, there's nothing that Trump could do. There's nothing that Trump could do, that he was willing to support Trump to the very end, to die for Trump, didn't matter. Trump could murder someone on the White House steps and he would still support him. That was actually word for word right there. And what sense does that make in any world? Okay, so let's say that person you murdered on the White House steps was your son or daughter. You're still going to support Trump too? Like, at what point? It's just absurd. And I don't know where these people come from. I don't know how they get so programmed. I just don't know. I wish I could brainwash people like that. How do I sign up to brainwash people? Because we could just brainwash people like that and bring them around to something that would actually benefit us. But the danger is in who's got the secret sauce that really is going to benefit us all, and not be some nefarious dark cult that then leads to some Diddy freak-offs or something, right? Like, that's the problem, is who is the one that has like the true best interest of everyone in mind, and it doesn't. I'm very skeptical on that. Oftentimes, we got a comment. What do we got?
Thomas Ritter says, "Let's do 4 more years of the last 4 years. Sounds like fun, huh?"
Right. I honestly, I'll be honest with you. I'm a little more cynical than that. I don't know if you're new to the channel or not, but my issue is that we have corporate money as what's our government at this point. Really, our government is, petrodollars, corporate behemoths like BlackRock and Vanguard, and and the rest of them, Google, any of the, Microsoft, all of them combined. With somewhat divergent interests, so they're always vying for what's going to give them their best benefit. You've got food industry as well. You've got all of these interests, pharmaceutical industry interests, but they're the ones funding all the campaigns. So they're the ones who are contributing the largest amounts to campaign financing and to lobbying for their interests. So my problem is that I'm so cynical at this point that I don't think without completely dismantling that system, I don't mean our system of government, but dismantling the ability of the large financial corporate interests of allowing their money into our political system, that's really the only way to solve the problem. So this last 4 years, to me, the last 40 years, You know, it's been going on for a very long time. It's just getting more and more overt. And I think people may be getting dumber. I don't know. And again, I've used that word dumb, and I'm not sure that's an accurate word. I think people are becoming more and more programmed and even less aware, which is shocking. I don't know how you end up there is wild to me. I hope that we start to see a change. Maybe psychedelics are going to have an impact on our consciousness as human beings, and we're actually going to see something start to emerge. But I'm not sure. I don't see psychedelics as an actual, elixir to all our problems. I definitely don't think that's the case. So I'm not sure if there's a way to really change this. People need to become more aware and become more conscious. And I don't know how you do that. It's a very difficult problem. And that's funny because that's actually in the channel, Pragmatic Ego Management, the PEM podcast. The idea here is to try and get people to wake up. And the Toltec, practitioners of northern Mexico, they had this very devious way of tricking people, right? So when these individuals who are just checked out and just completely believing anything that comes their way, they would have to hit some sort of consequence based off of that. So there would be, in this ancient kind of practice, it's not that ancient, the past 500 years or so, in that old practice of getting someone to wake up, they would pull puppet strings in order to have that person slam into a brick wall and suffer. And then once that person suffered enough, the hope was that they would go, wait a second, I need to consider my choices. But that's kind of difficult to do within the context of what we're talking about right now. And God forbid we do end up in some really messed up totalitarian regime or, complete financial collapse or, I don't know, mismanagement of resources. You name it, any type of internal conflict that could even, if we were to find ourselves in God forbid, a civil war, would be an absolute nightmare. Anyone who thinks that's a good choice just has not seen real violence. So yeah, it's, I don't know what's going to happen with humanity, but we seem to struggle at becoming aware. I'm going to leave it at that. Could probably talk about that forever. So we'll go on to the next video.
Generally speaking, we are not really allowed to comment deeply on your politics. But since things are changing somewhat in the near future, I am allowed to give you some very general specifics about the election in the United States. However, there must be caveats with this, since we are normally not allowed to comment on such things. There are certain things we can say, but if we say them, because it is your world, are you willing to take responsibility for the responses of your population to what we are about to say? And before you answer, think carefully about what that means. Are you willing to take responsibility for what we are about to say? Be sure the answer is yes.
Yes.
All right. This is what we are allowed to say. The female will lead to open contact. The male will lead to the termination of the United States and World War III. End of comment. Understand that what we have been allowed to do here today is highly unusual and only indicative of the fact that you are closer to contact than you were before.
What does he mean by closer to contact? Is he talking about contact with aliens? Is that what he means? Because I know Bashar is basically an alien species in another galaxy or something, right? That's being channeled through that dude's name. What's that guy's name? Do you know his name?
Daryl Inca?
Yeah. I have an issue with predicting the future. Although futures have been predicted, I think there's been notable examples of people coming up with astonishing predictions of the future. So, but I don't know what that really means exactly that's happening, right? Well, you have a certain number of potential outcomes that are clearly kind of visible. Now, I think it gets more complicated, and I haven't really studied them. Like the predictions of Nostradamus, right? Supposedly he predicted what? He predicted World War I and World War II. He predicted a bunch of global events that he apparently was very accurate with, but I haven't read all that stuff. And how was it written? Were the predictions made in strange language where other people interpreted them a certain way after the fact to be sort of convenient? I don't know enough about that. So anyone who's a Nostradamus, expert can shed light on that. I'm nowhere near that. I've never even read anything on him. I just know he made predictions, and he might have been doing a nutmeg or some sort of psychedelic mixture that he was taking. But predictions are something that I am somewhat skeptical on, right? I think that we're always trying to predict the future, whether you're investing in the stock market, you're investing in business, you're looking for strategic, advantage in politics or in, the larger scale of what is going on at nation states, and they're trying to predict what's going to happen next. If you're trying to, we're always trying to predict things, right? But I had an interesting psychedelic experience one time, a very powerful psychedelic experience in which one of two things was happening. Either both myself and my tripping partner were engaging in some sort of short-term prediction of the future, or we're engaging in some sort of imposing of our will upon reality. And I came to the conclusion later that it was the latter. I don't think you can, with accuracy, really predict the future, because I don't believe in a fated future. I don't think that's the case. This turned off right now. The issue I have with a fated future is that one of the ways that I arrived at my belief system around spirituality and a lot of things was to read layman's books on quantum mechanics and quantum theory. And it seemed to me that based off of what I had read and my very limited understanding, that the future is only a set of potentials, possibly infinite potentials, and that there's this, as we traverse through time at each moment that an event takes place, there's a collapse of all these potentials to the singularity of the moment being reality manifests in what it is. And then that also leads to maybe multi-dimensional theory, but the multiverse. But I think that it makes more sense to me than a fated, predictable future in which, in the end, I would say that counters the idea that we would really have free will then. And I do believe we have free will. I don't think it's black and white. I think it's based on our level of awareness. But there's a lot of people trying to answer these questions. My point is, I think you can make a prediction and be fairly close to correct. So, for instance, this comment about termination in the United States in World War III. Well, I think that could happen. I don't know that it would have necessarily to do just with Trump being elected, but I think we're in a very precarious world, and we're at, I think we're at the average, kind of term ending period for any empire at this point. So as we reach about the 300-year marker, it seems that not too many empires make it past that and seem to decline within that kind of 3 to 4 centuries. And I'm not a historian either, so someone who wants to shed more light on which empires lasted the longest and for how long and what the statistics of average are, we could look all that stuff up, right? We could just ask ChatGPT that right now. I'm not going to do that, but the point is, I think we are reaching a point, and we see the circumstances we're living in are precarious. Now, this other prediction that Kamala would lead to, he said open contact. And my interpretation is that he means open contact with alien life forms from other star systems. Wow. Why? Why would that be the case? It seemed to me, and it's a bit concerning, honestly, because we followed this Bashar character before, and he said some things that seemed pretty powerful, that align with a lot of things that I see about the world and the universe. But in this instance, it seemed fueled by some sort of political leanings, and that's concerning, because then it becomes manipulative. I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Kamala fan either. Kamala, however you say her damn name. I don't have faith in those structures, because I know that money is what's determining what's going on there. I think it's very dynamic and messy, by the way. I think sometimes when you get into this idea that there's this, the cabal and the someone, the puppet master pulling the strings, I think a little bit of that does happen, absolutely. The people who are, if we look at Vladimir Putin's hold over the country of Russia and the people he's murdered and attempted to murder over time, we know he's a puppet master pulling strings to stay in power. Absolutely, that happens. But I think it gets complicated, especially in the political arena that the U.S. is in, which is pretty different from Russia. And there's a lot of players. So I don't, I don't know enough, and I don't know if people do know enough about what is, to use Putin's situation as an example, what are his necessary allies and allegiances with large, very rich corporations and powerful companies. He's got a large industrial military complex, so he has, all kinds of industries and businesses involved to provide that for him. So he can't just do whatever the hell he wants. There has to be a give and take, otherwise they'll just get rid of him. And I'm sure he manages those alliances and allegiances very, very well to stay in power for as long as he has. But it's still more of a direct pyramid to the top, I think, with that model versus what we have here, which, we have different political factions and different political groups and large and powerful corporate interests. And I think it's more messy, is the way I would put it. So I don't see it quite as simple as just a single puppet master or a very small knit group that are the only ones running things. I think it's probably very complicated to understand who's really responsible for what in every circumstance. I think it would be hard to nail that down. So ultimately, I think the problem just is that people tend to lean towards greed and lust for power, and that there are a certain amount of people at the highest levels of powerful corporations, billion-dollar industries, that are able to influence, policy and influence legislature and influence very important aspects of our government, and I don't think their main interest is in the well-being of the general population. So I don't think that Kamala is going to be vastly, better than someone else, other than my problem with Trump is I do think he's an egomaniac, and I also don't think he's, terribly intelligent. Honestly, he says some things that are really, and that could, maybe he's way more intelligent than I think, and that's all part of his act to relate to the sheep out there. These people who think, oh, it's our blue-collar working man's president here, just really looking out for us, like that. Maybe because they, I watched the whole thing on that where someone was very kind of interesting psychological perspective on how people like, especially people who aren't too bright, really like to hear other people talk that aren't too bright like them, because then they feel like, oh, that person's just like me. And I hate to have just that accent. I'm not saying everyone that has an accent like that is necessarily that way, but it's kind of like that, I don't know, man. There's a certain flavor to these folks out here that are really maybe not too bright. Some of them really aren't that bright. I watched the whole thing about Trump may have a 73 IQ or something like that. Apparently, that's crazy to me. There's some people who have analyzed the way he talks and all this stuff. none of that really is what matters to me, though. What matters to me is the corporate interest, the large money, and where the money's going, and what that means for motives, and what legislation and actual governmental actions will be taken based off that. That's my concern. I don't. These candidates and everyone being so caught up in that, to me, it's not. We could be on the verge of World War III right now, with or without Trump, is my point. We could be on the verge of contact with an alien species, with or without Kamala. So these predictions he's making here, they're kind of like, okay, so what? Yeah, we know. What do we call UFOs now? We don't call them UFOs anymore. UAVs, whatever we call them. We know they're there. We know that the government released this big, controversial release when they finally opened up and said, yeah, there are these incidents that we can't explain. We know there's so many countless stories of it. And we know the math behind it. There's a basic probability theory around astronomy that says absolutely there has to be other intelligent species out there, and probably some that are vastly more advanced than we are, based off of how old the universe is, how big it is, those things. So I think that we're probably always pretty close to World War III, maybe getting a little closer now. The world seems very dangerous, and we're probably always close to making contact with whatever the first alien species that decides they're willing to, actually contact us. Although, I wonder why they haven't up to this point, right? You have to wonder. And maybe there's some reason we just don't understand. Maybe they just don't want to deal with us because we're pretty much a cancer on our planet, and we tend to be a rather toxic species, and maybe they just avoid us and just observe from a distance. I don't know. But I think there's something concerning about Bashar making those predictions there, because it feels like there's an agenda there, and we've never seen that before. So I question that whole thing that just happened there.
You got ID on you?
Yeah, I do.
Do you mind if I see it, please?
Yeah, I do.
So, I'm here for a call for service, okay?
Get off this thing before I fall off of it.
Wanting you trespass. Okay, so in order for me to do that, I have to have your name, okay?
Yeah, that's not true. There's nothing in the NRS 207.200 says anything about giving your name. But also, they're a public office. They can't really trespass me from going to a public office trying to figure out how to get public records. On top of that, I haven't been asked to leave, so let's go this route. I'll just layer by layer, like an onion, I'll peel away your qualified immunity. Sir, if I'm not going to leave, will you arrest me?
Have a great day.
That's what I thought. Okay, bye-bye.
That was awesome. That was good. Man, he knew the code section, everything, and that's awesome to have that level of knowledge and understanding around things like that. I think it's tough in this world to have that, right? That's where technology really comes in. Unless you've got a photographic memory. I forget things over time, especially things I don't focus on. So for a while there, I was focusing on some of that stuff, some of the, the constitutional rights stuff. Then you also have the local codes and state and local laws side of things. And if you aren't practicing that every day, they say a skill not used is a skill that gets lost. So over time, you're going to start to fade. And I do on a lot of these things. I'm focused on certain things right now, and there's other aspects. I don't have that photographic memory that maybe some people do. Wish I did, I don't. So I would not have that information. That brings up, I think, another side of this, which is the things that we're good at are the things that we spend our time doing. First of all, usually we spend our time doing things that we feel are the most important to us, or that we get the most enjoyment out of, or that we just feel forced to do. If you're forced to go to work you hate, but you're still doing that job, you're probably decently good at something after you've been doing it for years. And, I think technology is going to get really interesting, because I think there's going to become assistants, these AI type assistants, where you could have that right there. You're going to have some capability to bring up local municipal laws right on the spot. See, I wouldn't be able to do what that guy did, because I'm not focused on that right now. That's not what my main focus and daily work is on. Local municipal and state codes around, say, trespassing, or traffic laws, or what the particular kind of all of the circumstances around what it would be for probable cause to search him, or all that stuff, right? You have to spend time really memorizing that and keeping that up here. And most of us can only keep so much up, in the memory banks without really focused effort. And so I think technology is what's going to be coming around. And thankfully, there's a lot of people if we're focused on, people in the First Amendment auditors, the people auditing government, the people spreading, the message of knowing your rights and understanding what rights are over privileges, and really exercising your rights. There's a good number of people out there, I think, doing that. So hopefully as the tech evolves, we're going to see more and more of the capability of having that information on instant recall right there to say, hey, no, here's the code. Probably in voice form too, where it's like a Siri type voice can just say to these cops, hey, here's the code, here's what's really going on, here's what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, things like that. Because I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd have to go and study. I think a lot of that's going to be coming up, guys, and that's going to be great. I think that's going to be a very positive thing. And that's the thing. We live in a really complicated world. So whatever it is you want to be good at, there could be several aspects of life that are important and you're not good at. You could be focused on something you're good at, and there's just so many different parts of life that make life very complicated, and it takes so many hours, and there's only 24 hours in every day to really hone those skills and maintain memory and knowledge around those things, that I think technology is going to step in there and help us. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean for us as far as our own intelligence is concerned, because then we won't need that effort as much. We won't have to keep that up here as much. And that may, I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know what that's going to mean for us as a species. I think as you're exposed to knowledge repeatedly, you start to absorb it. But you have to be highly focused and present during, whatever form that knowledge is coming in. So just the fact that there could be AI or some sort of supplemental technology that's bringing this knowledge forward, if it's happening repeatedly, and it's repeatedly happening, you're going to absorb it. You're going to absorb it probably whether you want to or not. But I don't know. I don't know what that means for us at a developmental level, evolutionary level, I'm not sure. But I think it will be very helpful in circumstances like this because, knowing how to approach that situation, you can see how effective it was there. Now, those cops were not violators, is what I would say. They weren't the type of cops who are going to really bend and break the law, because the minute he pushed up against them and had the exact laws and the exact verbiage to address them with, you saw what happened. They were gone. But I'm going to tell you right now, not all cops are that way. And we've certainly seen that on many channels where they don't give a shit. They're going to put hands on you. They're going to try to take your camera from you. They're going to do all kinds of crazy shit. And that's a good thing that we have more and more accountability surfacing with all the cameras and monitoring going on. There's a negative side to that too for the rest of us public. It goes both ways, but it is nice to see it when it's used against a government that's overreaching. So interesting there. Yeah, that guy did a great job.
Like if you're in a situation,
nice.
Other people can see it immediately, and that might scare someone off too. It's like your face is on live right now.
Well, there's a movie that I just watched. What was it called? And it was exactly about this. Man, what was that movie called?
Newer?
The Circle. Oh. It's called The Circle, and it's with Tom Hanks. And it was all about this. What started to happen is people started to call for complete transparency, meaning you're filmed every day, every moment of your life. Except for like in the bathroom. You're given only so much time in the bathroom. You're given only so much time for whatever, and then you're live. And so what they were saying is like, well, if you're a politician, we want complete transparency. So you're on camera all the time, which is not a bad idea. But what ended up happening in the movie does a good job of showing some of the ethical concerns around that, which is there was like a suicide. There was all these things that started to happen because people just couldn't handle it. Yeah, it was nuts. It was nutty. And then the woman involved, I don't know the actress's name. She did a good job in it. She started to like instead of abandoning it, she was like, no, we can fix it. We can make it actually work. This is what we have to do to make it work. And it was like, it was a really interesting premise. You got to watch The Circle. I would have to almost watch it again just to.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out.
But I think there's always pros and cons. That's the concern. There's cons.
And while you were talking, I was looking up apps for like legality stuff. There's a couple good ones actually.
There's one coming up from Long Island Audit.
Oh.
And it's called something lawyer, something. What's it called? Yeah. And what it's going to be, his is going to be really good. I don't know if he's released it yet or not. What it's going to be is, if you get pulled over by the cops, you get stopped by the cops, you get whatever. It's like you're saying. It's like a button.
Yeah.
It locks the phone, and they can't stop it.
Oh yeah.
And then it records the whole thing, and it contacts your emergency contact, whoever you said is your emergency contact, and it immediately contacts an attorney, and it sends the video to the attorney. So, and I forget what his, I forget what it's called. It's gonna be sick.
Yeah,
I want to get that.
that
Hell yeah, that thing's sick.
That's sick.
So they can't stop it no matter what they want. And there's been some important case law around stuff going up because some cops have tried to say, oh, I think they're winning these cases. There was one notable case where cops were saying, oh, you can't be live at a traffic stop because that affects officer safety. But I do believe that one of the circuit courts just ruled on that and said, no, that is not a valid argument against our First Amendment freedom.
Attorney Shield.
Yes, that's it. You found it. Attorney Shield. Lawyer Shield. Attorney Shield, yes.
First quarter. Oh, wait. It might actually be out. Huh?
Yeah, that's it. That's badass. He's gonna make a shit ton of money on that. You know what? I'm happy for him. That guy's awesome. He's done a lot of great work. The shit that he was getting into with some of those cops. What was the name of that one?
Oh, it's out. Yeah.
Patrick Ryder. It's out.
Yeah.
How much they want for it?
It's free.
It's free right now.
I think right now,
yeah. Well, that's
developing it still.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I'm doing with my site. So
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this.
Yeah.
Attorney Shield Inc. Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's the right one, I'll have to double.
I'm pretty sure Attorney Shield, but I don't know about the ink. But I'm pretty sure it was called Attorney Shield. Yeah.
All right. This is the white business owner one.
Watch this, just to give them the impression of how
Hi,
stupid
I'm
they
a
are.
white business owner, and I'm here to show all you white women my new earrings, only for white women. They're a buffalo plaid design made out of like a leather material because we know only American white women wear these type of earrings. So if you're interested in buying from a white business owner and having these earrings, my target audience is white women. Hit me up in my bio for these fancy new buffalo plaid earrings just for you.
You just targeted one demographic of people. You supposed to be targeting everybody. Yeah. You put yourself in a box. You limiting who your customers are. Yeah. I remember we got invited to this YouTube Black event. This is before we got deep into politics. Yeah. And I guess when we went to the event, I was like, man, this is rubbing me the wrong way, man. It was just a black event, and it was just weird. It's just an event for black people. I was like, this is kind of stupid. White people don't have just white-only events.
They did.
It just felt stupid.
Thing.
Yeah. Felt out of place. And I was black. I just felt like part of the Black Klan or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I always, with this, default to what I think the most powerful statements that I've heard recently was when Morgan Freeman gave that interview and he said, stop calling me a black man and I'll stop calling you a white man and we can just stop talking about race altogether. And I agree with that. I think that is definitely what the problem is what does race have to do with anything? And for me, it has nothing to do with any decisions that I make with people whatsoever. When you have kind of the stereotypical imagery around certain social interactions, right? We've all seen the comedians and the skits show the the scared white people interacting with the black person on the street or something, right? And you see those interactions, and then you have all kinds of twists on that. You've got people who really are thugs, and you got people who are not at all, but somehow are perceived that way, and what have you. There are all ranges of all types of people from every race, in my experience. There are cultural differences. There are, like if you're in the Philippines, let's say, and you have, a negative interaction with someone, it's a good idea to watch your back and be careful, because their culture is one of smiling in your face and literally stabbing you in the back. And I mean literally, with a knife. And that's cultural. That may have to do with a lot of reasons why that emerged for them. But I also don't think that's necessarily just their culture. I think you can see that almost anywhere. I think that, you look at American culture and we have this idea that, fight like a man, one-on-one, a duel where we both agree we're gonna, square up or whatever, is obviously the opposite of what I just mentioned with the Filipino side of things. And that's coming from the martial arts community, guys. That's not, I'm not saying that all Filipinos, that came from some of the knife fighting training I've done and some of the trainings I've done with people. I talk about that aspect of how they may approach an encounter with someone that's truly has real animosity involved in it. And then kind of looking at these different cultural perspectives on those types of interactions. But I think in every single one of them, you'll see some subset that will utilize deception or utilize what we would consider an underhanded technique, or like in the U.S. we talk about fighting fair, right? A fair fight with somebody, which I don't even understand that myself personally. A fair fight is in a ring, I guess, or a cage, or a agreed upon sporting event. Okay, fair enough, we'll have a quote unquote fair sporting event. But a fight on the street is, if you're fighting fair, I don't know why. I can't imagine the point to that at all. A fight on the street is a fight to the death, in my opinion. Hopefully not. Hopefully it doesn't have to end in someone's death, but I take it as a deadly threat. It is very much a deadly threat on the street. And that's why, all the things we've talked about with road rage and all kinds of other interactions have with people is really a bad idea. But my point is that we apply kind of stereotypes and this whole, idea that each individual race is interacting differently, and that we're all different. And then we have our allegiances to our own race, our own group, our own social pods or whatever. And it just keeps us isolated, right? I think it just keeps us from making progress. I saw it when I was in prison a couple of times. I didn't do long, hard sentences, but, last one was, less than it was really actually less than a year. I got a year, and I got to do some time on a house arrest ankle monitor, but I had to serve a few months in Donovan. I was in a very easy place. But it's interesting, and I've been twice. I also went when I was younger in 2004, to see the racial segregation inside the jail and prison population situation, especially in California. And that maintaining of that is clearly something that the guards maintain, because it keeps the population focused on each other and all their infighting than focusing on the real oppressors, the real subjugators, which of course are the guards and the prison staff. So we keep focusing on that in this country and the world, that race is something of importance. And I think meanwhile, the people that are really, perpetrating theft and slavery and, all kinds of things that are resulting in their enormous benefit are happening while we're sitting here focused on race, which is, it's absurd. And it's really rather small-minded. I brought a lot of that stuff up to the cultural differences because I've run into all types of different people, and I've seen all types of different people within each culture and race. I've seen thugs, I've seen educated aristocrats, I've seen intellectuals, I've seen stupid sheeple, I've seen vulnerable, poor me people. I've seen them all. And they exist in all of these, all of the races, all of the cultures. So I don't judge people that way. I can tell who's in front of me by the way they hold themselves, by the way they speak, by the way they interact, by the way they act and conduct their behavior. So that it's just strange that I was raised a certain way. So I was raised, you know, in a very racially mixed area, and then I was actually a minority in the schools I went to, where I was, you know, I was the grain of rice in the raisin bowl. So that must have had a lot to do with it, because I had none of that conditioning, and I wasn't raised by parents who had any racial conditioning. So for me, it was very easy. But if you're programmed, again, that's the problem, the programming, you know. So obviously that woman's making fun of the black-owned business stuff. And yeah, I think it's a mistake to focus on that. I think you do ostracize and isolate a good portion of what could be your potential client base based off this idea that you're, you know, specifically racially owned business, that you want to tell everyone that that's your, you know, your big badge of honor. I don't think it's, because yeah, if you say that, if I say I'm a white-run business, how many black or other racial people are going to want to go to my business? I think they're going to get kind of a weird feeling from that. I know if I see if I see a sign or I see someone that says black-owned, black-owned, black-run business, like, I immediately get a feeling like I'm not really supposed to be there. It kind of makes me feel that way. Like, I guess I'm not supposed to be there, because it kind of has and I don't, you know, it could just kind of, I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know if that's their intention. It might not be. But it does have a little bit of that, right? That could be my own assumption. They might just welcome white people and they're fine and provide them with goods and services without a problem. I don't know that. But I know when I see that sign or I see that notification that's a black-owned business, I feel a little like, I guess this isn't for me, type thing. And so I don't think it's the best way. I don't think it's a good way to go. I don't think race should be considered at all. Anyway.
In 2015, this CEO told all his employees that he was going to be raising everyone's salary to $70,000 per year. Dan Price was able to do this because he lowered his own salary from $1.1 million to $70,000 also. When he first announced this, a few so-called experts called Dan a socialist lunatic and an enemy to capitalism, saying his business would go bankrupt soon. Fast forward to the present day, Dan's company not only doubled their workforce, they have tripled their overall sales, but that's just success on the money side. Dan's employees are now able to buy their own homes in this crazy economy. Many of them have had kids since the salary increase because they can actually afford to do so. His employees are fiercely loyal to Dan and his company because they're getting paid really well. During COVID, when company sales slowed, employees voluntarily took a 60% pay cut to keep the company afloat, and it worked. And when business returned to pre-COVID numbers, Dan even repaid that pay cut back to his employees, which led to his people all chipping in and buying him a new Tesla to show their appreciation.
Yep. That's funny. It's funny how that was threatening to other CEOs and other company bigwigs, right? Because they're not going to do the same thing. And you know, I think showing your appreciation to your employees is really important. And my business hasn't made it there, so I don't know. I see that from a position of, like, that guy was making 1.1 million, right? So he must have he probably socked away a good amount of cash and then was like, you know what, I don't really need that much more money from this company. Let me help everyone out, which is, it would be great if more people were like that, because how much more money do you need? How much more money do these huge billionaire, ultra-rich people need, and yet they're still collecting their enormous salaries? This is my problem even with professional sports. I won't watch sports. I refuse. I'm not going to participate in that because it does nothing for me. I guess for a lot of people it's entertaining. It's actually not that entertaining for me because when I was a kid, I liked to play sports. So I always thought it was weird to sit and watch other people play sports because that to me felt like being on the sidelines, like being benched in the game. Like, I don't want to be on the bench. I want to be in the game. Why do I want to watch someone play baseball, play basketball, play football? I'd rather be playing those sports myself, right? So that never made sense to me anyway. But then when you see the large amounts of money involved and the people who are these diehard fans, they get nothing from it except the entertainment that they get that I don't get from it. But good for them, they get entertained. But I see it as, look, it would make way more sense to me to support these teams if you were like a local team supporter. Let's say I'll use one because I have some family out there, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? If you're going to support them and you were a person who had like season tickets to the games there at Three River Stadium, right? And then the Steelers gave you back a certain, I don't know, a certain cut. Maybe you cut a check $10,000 every year for being a loyal fan. That would be different. I would feel a little differently about it. And I know they could afford to do that, and they won't do it. And so I don't believe anyone deserves to get paid $1 million a game to play a game. Some people are getting paid more than $1 million to play one game. No, I refuse. I refuse to be a part of that. I'm not going to support that. They're already ungodly wealthy, like an unreal amount of wealth, and they're not sharing with anyone. And hey, I don't believe in socialism either, because I think socialism is a terrible model that leads to subjugation, because there's always someone, someone who steps in and begins to believe that they're, more equal than others, and that's where the real problems. We've never seen communism on this planet. It's never happened. It's only reached socialism. So I really am not into that model. But at the same time, there is a point here. There is a point in which, what is your deal? And I do feel that way. So whatever your number is, right? That guy, who knows how much money he had? Like if you reach $20 million, you could go a few years at $70,000 a year, right? Why not? You don't even need the money really. Like, hey, the guy probably has investment properties. He's got mutual funds. He's got investments, other investments in the stock market. Who knows what he's invested in, right? He's gaining interest on his capital. But yeah, there's not many people like that. That's too bad. Anyway, guys, that's it for this one. I challenge you to think about what you believe. Really think about why you believe it. Do you believe it because a book told you it? Do you believe it because someone that was older than you told you this? Do you believe it because someone on a TV screen or a computer screen told you this? Why do you believe what you believe? I think it's important to think about that more and more. We'll leave it there, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, thanks for watching. For long form, you can find us on YouTube and Rumble. For short highlight clips from the podcast, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok. Please visit psychedelis.com. You can find all sorts of assets and resources in the psychedelic business space, including retreat centers, clinics, ketamine clinics, individual integration coaches, guides, shamans, you name it. We've also got products, chocolate bars, gummies, spores, Blue Lotus flower, all kinds of things. Go on and check it out. There's even more than that on there. If you would like more content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to ask a specific question or submit videos for me to react to directly, please email us at ThePemPod@gmail.com. All right, guys.